First, he said he didn't know it was a quid pro quo for military aid, and now he admits that he did. And that's how a crucial witness in the impeachment inquiry has just blown President Trump's cover. U.S. Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, now admits that he personally spelled out the terms of a quid pro quo to Ukraine, a fact he omitted from his testimony of last month. In a stunning move, Sondland amended his testimony to House impeachment investigators, saying that other witnesses have now refreshed his recollection about certain conversations. He now confirms that he made clear to a top Ukrainian official that military support was contingent on Ukraine's willingness to deliver on Trump's demands. According to Sondland's updated testimony, he now recalls telling a top aide to President Zelensky, quote, that resumption of U.S. aid would likely not occur until Ukraine provided the public anti-corruption statement, a statement committing Ukraine to investigate Trump's political opponents. With this revelation, Sondland has become the fourth witness to affirm a quid pro quo, military aid in exchange for political dirt. And this comes with the release of Sondland's testimony of last month, which paints a damning picture of how the president extorted Ukraine through his personal lawyer. Sondland says that Trump repeatedly ordered him to, quote, talk to Rudy Giuliani last month, saying Ukraine is a problem. He portrayed their squeeze of Ukraine as an escalating set of demands, which became conditions for American support. And Sondland said that those demands, quote, kept getting more insidious as the timeline went on. And while Sondland said he could not pinpoint when he finally realized Trump and Giuliani were seeking dirt on the Bidens, the conditions on Ukraine came to include an investigation of both the 2016 election and Burisma, the company linked to Hunter Biden. In a damning statement, Sondland said those conditions would have to be complied with prior to getting a meeting between Trump and Zelensky. And he testified that after realizing what was afoot, he believed the demands on Ukraine were improper, if not illegal. I'm joined right now by Josh Lederman, NBC News national political reporter, Yamiche Alcindor, White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour, and Glenn Kirshner, former federal prosecutor. Josh, tell us the story of Gordon Sondland and how he switched from a guy who seemed to be helping out Trump to a guy who's now going 180 from and says there was a quid pro quo, no military aid without dirt on Biden.
Right. So Sondland had said previously, and Republicans had really seized on the fact that in those text messages, he had said that he'd spoken to Trump and he'd been clear that there had been quid pro quo, no quid pro quo. And so now what Sondland is saying is, look, all I was doing was representing what the president had told me. And that might not have been the case. In fact, he didn't think it was the case because we know that right around that same time, he was telling the top aide to Zelensky, you need to do X if you want to get Y. And actually, I spoke to a source that's close to Sondland today who laid it out this way. He said, look, if I tell you, I'm pretty sure the mafia is going to break your windows if you don't pay up, that's neither extorting you nor is it excusing the mafia, because it's just passing along my best sense of the situation as it happens to be. So Sondland's trying to split the difference by saying, I conveyed what the president told me, but it also was not the case, and I told the Ukrainians what I knew was the situation.
But now he was telling the Ukrainians, you better do this, you won't get that.
Exactly.
He was executing the quid pro quo.
Yeah, and I think we can now take the term quid pro quo, ball it up, and throw it in the trash, and let's call this what it is. It's bribery, because bribery, Chris, is nothing more than providing money or some kind of an inducement to a government official to take an act or decline to take an act. That's what Trump did. He was trying to induce President Zelensky to stand up in front of cameras somewhere, somehow, and say, we're investigating the Bidens. That's bribery. Let's start calling it what it is, because it's one of the big 3 or 4 in the Constitution: treason, bribery, other high crimes and misdemeanors. What are the Republican senators going to say now?
Well, we now have 4 witnesses, including the one who we thought was a Trumpy. This Trumpy has now said quid pro quo.
What are Republicans going to say now is that they're going to continue to be nimble, as the easy way to put it, the nice way to put it. They are going to continue to adjust their message. The message seems to be moving toward this was problematic for President Trump, but it wasn't impeachable. All my conversations with Republicans, none of them are saying that these people aren't credible. No one's saying that these people are making this up or that these transcripts are fake, as the president said. And this was a remarkable change by Ambassador Sondland here. You have him the day before his transcript is coming out saying, Actually, I want to add a little bit here. My memory's kind of refreshed here. I've been talking to his attorney most of the day, and his attorney essentially says, I was pressing him on this idea, what do you make of people who would say that he's contradicting himself, that this is really self-serving? He didn't really want to engage on that, but he did basically say that this is someone who wants to just do what's right and talk to Congress and present his side of the story.
Does anybody believe politicians are people like this anymore? Does anyone believe he had his memory refreshed? Josh,
certainly not. That's the argument.
Well, after reviewing stuff, he's covering his butt.
Right. After reviewing these other people's opening statements, suddenly he can recall this conversation. And look, I think Sondland's team knows that that does not make him look like a great witness. And I think we'll have to see whether House Democrats...
a great lawyer.
Right.
His lawyer sounds like a rinky-dink. I mean, this guy says, just tell him you don't remember.
And we'll have to see whether House Democrats even decide to put him forward in those open hearings that they plan to have, or whether they decide that some of these other decorated career servants might be better.
What's President Trump? I've got to talk about the prime defendant here, the guy who may well be impeached within the next month. What's he thinking? Can anybody defend me? Nobody wants to defend me. Nobody. Not even this Trumper. I gave him the job of, ambassador to the European Union, and he still won't stand up for me?
Well, first of all, I was at the White House all day, and it was a very quiet White House. This was a president who didn't have any public events today, and that tells you in some ways that the president isn't even out defending himself as these transcripts come out. The other thing to note is that the president is essentially wanting Republicans to display this fierce loyalty, and Mitch McConnell did say today that he thinks that President Trump, if he gets impeached and it gets to the Senate, that he will be acquitted. So you have Republicans saying, look, we're seeing all of this. We still think we know how this is going to end, and it's going to end with President Trump still in office.
Is it a rope-a-dope Senate trial where they say, yeah, that's all true. Yeah, that's all true. That's all true. And then they give the Seinfeld defense. Not that there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah. And
I mean, that absurd defense.
I love Yamisha's word, nimble. I don't think you can nimble your way out of bribery. The question is, are they going to follow the rule of law or are they not? And if they're not, at what cost to our republic? And the one thing I like about Sondland giving the president up, he's not a never Trumper. He was an always Trumper until perjury seemed to be a little bit more important, and then he had to tell the truth. So, but will it matter? Will the rule of law matter?
But what the emerging argument Republicans in the Senate are going to make is, look, quid pro quos happen in foreign policy all the time. The question here is the thing that we wanted from Ukraine a legitimate foreign policy ask, pursuing corruption, or was this a personal thing? And if there's any wiggle room there, that's where Republicans are going to try to split those.
The transcripts say that it's personal, right? The transcripts say that the president said these are bad people, that they wanted to take me down. He's talking to the Ukrainian officials directly. There are direct quotes of President Trump in these transcripts saying that. So what you're saying is it makes a lot of sense because this is in some ways very, very personal for this president.
Yeah. Well, as Josh just mentioned, Sondland also confirmed that his September denial of a quid pro quo in a text message to Ambassador Bill Taylor came directly from the president himself. In describing that conversation with the president, Sondland says, I asked him one open-ended question. What do you want from Ukraine? He said, I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. I want Zelensky to do the right thing. Well, Sondland added that I don't know if it was the truth or it wasn't the truth. That's what he told me. I was only obeying orders.
Yeah, that's like every bad mafia line. Listen, I'm not telling you to hurt anybody. I'm just saying that's what we have here. I mean, it's so transparent that it's laughable.
Well, what do we make of this Volker's testimony today coming in about Rudy Giuliani having to tell them that everybody does do what Rudy tells you to do?
Yeah, that's right. We also learned from these transcripts that came out today that Pompeo was essentially rolling his eyes at Giuliani, saying this is a problem we've got to deal with, and that the impression from folks around him was that Pompeo and others at the State Department wanted Giuliani out of this, but had to hit, quote, a brick wall in trying to get Giuliani removed from the Ukraine.
But then we're getting the word to everybody. The word is passed among foreign policy, civil servants, foreign policy, and foreign officers. Do what Rudy wants.
Yeah.
I mean, this is mob stuff. Rudy's the enforcer. Do what this guy wants.
The president in the meetings, after meetings with State Department officials, essentially say two things. One, Rudy Giuliani is going to handle this, talk to him. But he also is in some ways implicating people around him. There's this mention of the Attorney General. There's this mention of Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. So I think it will be interesting to see what other characters emerge and whether or not those people are going to be as loyal to President Trump as he thinks they're going to be.
It looks more and more like that drug deal that Bolton called. Anyway, furthermore, Ambassador Volker, he's one of the three amigos, one of the three henchmen here for the president. He testified that he warned Giuliani that the former New York mayor was off base when it came to his theories about Joe Biden. According to the transcript of his deposition, Volker told Giuliani, "It is simply not credible to me that Joe Biden would be influenced in his duties as vice president by money or things for his son or anything like that." He also said, quote, "The negative narrative about Ukraine, which Mr. Giuliani was furthering, was the problem. It was, in my view, it was impeding our ability to build a relationship the way we should be doing it." And Josh, back to this, and this is the hardest thing for me to absorb. There are human beings, including the president, who believe that somehow the Democratic National Committee server somehow found its way to Kiev. And it's sitting over there somewhere in physical space, in reality. And that is, in fact, what happened to the hacking. It wasn't a hacking by the Russians. It was a hacking by, I guess, the Ukrainians who somehow got the terminal or the server over there. And that's what they want investigated, this wacky theory.
And I just got back from Kiev on Friday night, Chris, and I can tell you I did not find the server anywhere over there. I did look for it. But look, this is very similar to something that we know that
people buy crazy theories. There was once, I said this before, I remember the cover of the National Enquirer. They took a picture of Jack Kennedy when he was alive, and they made him a little older, like in a high school play. They dusted him up and made him look gray. And they had this older-looking Jack Kennedy photograph looking out through a curtain. Jack Kennedy is alive in Poland. This crazy talk is in the president's head. He buys into this kind of stuff that they run in the National Enquirer in those tabs.
And the president's Homeland Security advisor at the time, Tom Bossert, explicitly told him this was a debunked theory, that there was no evidence of this. But what we see time and again is it doesn't matter. This gets in his head. We heard from the testimony that was revealed today that the president said over and over again,
put it in his
these
head.
Guys tried to take me down. He has an image about Ukraine and you can't shake it.
Is that because Manafort was working for them and had to sell that story to him?
It's probably because of that. It seems like Rudy Giuliani played a large role in fomenting that as well.
Oh,
I've also had some sources tell me that the president basically heard some Ukrainian officials criticizing him, and as a result, he decided that essentially the whole country was against him, and that is also informing why he feels so personally aggrieved by Ukraine.
Okay. I think his whole body rejects truth. He couldn't accept the fact that Barack Obama was elected president, so he said he was a birther. He was from some other country. It wasn't legal. It didn't actually happen. It didn't happen. He has to say the Russians didn't help me, so he has to come up with this cockamamie Ukraine theory. Anything to get out of his head, he lost. He's not the winner. Anyway, Josh Letterman, great reporting. Thank you, Amisha, as always, and thank you, Glenn Kirshner, as well.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.